Imagine just for a second, you're standing at 8,000 meters. You are in the death zone. The air up there is so incredibly thin that your brain actually starts to swell. Your lungs are literally bleeding. One misstep, that's it. You're done. And then, out of nowhere, a helicopter appears. The guy stepping out of that chopper? That's Nirmal Purja, better known to the world as Nims. Welcome to The Explainer. Because as of today, July 31st, 2026, Nims is at the absolute center of one of the most intense debates in modern sports. Right now, he's probably somewhere between a high-altitude base camp and a corporate boardroom, and he represents a massive mystery that we're going to unpack today.
So, the big question, savior or master manipulator? I mean, think about it. In just 5 short years, Nims went from being a retired Gurkha soldier to this massive global icon, and then, depending entirely on who you ask, public enemy number one in certain mountaineering circles, and then kind of back again. So what we're going to do is analyze his incredibly complex legacy through just the facts. We'll look at his unprecedented achievements, the heavy controversies that shook his career, and ultimately, we'll let you decide which side of the line he really stands on.
Section 1. Forging a climbing machine.
To actually understand the man, we got to look at his roots. He was born in 1983 in the incredibly rugged Myakdi district of Nepal. This is way off the traditional commercial trekking routes, and his path to the world's highest peaks was, well, totally unconventional. At just 16 years old, he joined the British Army's elite Gurkha regiment, but he pushed even further, right? He volunteered for the UK's Special Boat Service, or SBS. If you're not familiar, think of them as the British equivalent of the Navy SEALs. It's a top-tier maritime counterterrorism unit. And that massive number, 80, that is the 80% attrition rate of their selection process. To pass their infamous Hell Week, candidates endure extreme psychological torture, freezing water, and massive sleep deprivation. This absolutely brutal environment is exactly what forged his mindset.
And that brutal military environment forged a really unique philosophical divide in how he approaches climbing. See, the traditional mountaineering view often treats these giant peaks as divine, almost untouchable mysteries that need to be worshipped. But Nims, coming from his special forces background, he looks at mountains as massive logistical puzzles. That's his superpower. He has this ability to take what looks like an impossible mountain and break it down into simple, actionable steps. You just keep moving. And honestly, this approach is the only thing that made his next move even remotely possible.
Moving on to Section 2. The Impossible 14 Peaks.
Back in 2019, Nims announced this wild goal called Project Possible. The objective? Summit all 14 of the world's 8,000-meter peaks in just 7 months. To give you some context on how crazy this sounded to the climbing establishment at the time, veteran climber Alan Arnett famously went on the record calling the idea ludicrous and flat-out suicidal. Literally no one thought the human body could handle that kind of sustained, high-altitude trauma. But look at this staggering gap. The previous record for climbing all 14 peaks was nearly 8 years. 8 years. Nims' record? 6 months and 6 days. He didn't just break the record, he completely obliterated it. Now, the physical toll was absolutely astronomical. He lost 12 kilograms of body weight during the project. But he proved himself to be a total physical anomaly, pushing human endurance miles past what science thought was the absolute limit.
Just to grasp the sheer scale of this guy's endurance, let's look at his mind-bending 48-hour push. During that 2019 project, right after already surviving Annapurna and Dhaulagiri, Nims pulls off this logistical and physical masterpiece. Step 1, he climbs the full height of Everest. Step 2, he completes the incredibly dangerous traverse over to Lhotse. Step 3, he summits Makalu. He climbed 3 of the highest points on planet Earth in just 2 days. It's wild.
But this next one? This was his absolute crown jewel, shattering the K2 curse. Before Nims, no human being had ever stood on top of K2 during the incredibly harsh winter months. It was considered this decades-old curse in the climbing world. But Nims successfully coordinated a team to stand atop K2 in the dead of winter, proving once and for all that his logistical prowess and his sheer physical strength could actually conquer the most hostile environment on the planet.
All right, Section 3, Global Fame and Purest Backlash.
Fast forward to 2021, and Nims had transformed from a climber into a massive global brand. He was awarded an MBE by the British Crown, and the masterful marketing of his Netflix documentary 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible basically skyrocketed him to Hollywood-level fame.
But, as you might guess, with that massive mainstream attention came intense structural scrutiny from traditional mountaineers. See, the purists value pure individual alpinism. They argue that you have to respect the mountain's sanctity by climbing without heavy assistance. Nims, on the other hand, leans heavily into a very modern approach. He argues that using sky-high support crews, utilizing fixed ropes established by Sherpas, and employing massive resource coordination is just the reality of modern high-altitude mountaineering. So you have the purists seeing his climbs as these military operations that lack spiritual purity, and Nims arguing that literally no one else had the capability to coordinate such massive logistics so effectively.
Which brings us to Section 4, the 2023 K2 rescue scandal.
All of this underlying tension finally erupted during what was undeniably his darkest hour in the public eye. July 2023. Nims was on K2 with a film crew when a terrifying distress call came in. A Malaysian climber named Muhammad Hawari was collapsing at Camp 4, losing his vision and barely conscious at 8,000 meters. The timeline here moves incredibly fast. Step 1, the distress call comes in. Step 2, Nims actually commandeers a helicopter and executes an incredibly dangerous rescue at 8,000 meters, a height where helicopter rotors barely even function in the thin air. And he saves the man. But then, Step 3, the Pakistani Civil Aviation Authority, along with a local guide, accused Nims of fabricating the entire thing. They called it a well-orchestrated stunt just to get viral documentary footage. But finally, Step 4, after months of legal battles, Nims achieves full exoneration. He released the helicopter's raw GPS logs, the climber's actual medical data, and video evidence. And the rescued climber himself, Muhammad Hawari, put it incredibly bluntly. He said, "If Nims hadn't come, I would be dead." So the raw data and the victim completely cleared Nims' name. However, looking at this impartially, it's important to note that a large portion of the purist community still couldn't really shake their skepticism. To them, the whole incident still blurred the lines between a genuine rescue mission and reality TV. It painted him, in their eyes, as a figure who was maybe a bit too obsessed with his own legacy.
Section 5, rebuilding and diversifying.
Following the immense stress of that 2023 scandal, Nims realized something crucial. Speed records were simply becoming too hard to break, and that led to a highly strategic pivot in 2024 and 2025. First, he launched Nimsdai Media, taking full creative control and dropping raw, unfiltered YouTube content to rebuild that public trust. Second, he leaned heavily into elite guiding. We're talking charging upwards of $100,000 per client on Everest. Third, he began teasing something called Project 360, a cross-discipline challenge. And finally, he actually started training for underwater breath holds and desert ultramarathons. Basically, he engineered a totally seamless transition from just being a mountaineer to becoming a fully-fledged professional extreme athlete and a media mogul.
Section 6. Where is Nims right now?
Now this is where things get really urgent. Today is July 31st, 2026. And if you know Nims, you know the guy loves a surprise. He often waits completely off the radar until the weather is absolutely perfect and only announces a summit push right as he's heading up. Let's look at his options right now. In Nepal, the summer monsoon makes the mountains completely deadly and unclimbable. But over in Pakistan, specifically the Karakoram Range, there's a very good weather window right now. So, a base camp for K2 or Broad Peak? Highly likely. Alternatively, he could be back in the UK doing polar expedition training. There are actually unverified rumors circulating right now about a massive ski descent and a record traverse. Because today's breaking news could completely rewrite this entire narrative, you might actually want to check his social media right after this explainer to see if he just dropped an update from a peak somewhere.
So, how do we synthesize all of this? Nims has really become the ultimate 21st century adventurer. He's an athlete balancing studied cardiovascular efficiency, physical gifts that doctors are literally still analyzing, with the deep complexities of ego, climbing ethics, global social media, and hard business. His sheer physical ability basically forced the old guard of mountaineering to adapt to a brand new era. Whether you love his modern tactics or you're longing for the purest days of the past, he has undeniably changed the sport of mountaineering forever.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. Hero or villain? Is he the greatest mountaineer in history, saving lives and shattering limits? Or is he the man who commercialized the mountains into reality television? We've laid out the facts, we've gone through the records, and we've unpacked the controversies. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment below with your final verdict on his legacy, because I cannot wait to read your thoughts. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.